Hi, my name is Mhlauli-Moses with Healthy Black Woman, and this is Shaquita Graham with Loving the Black Man. How you doing today, Shaquita?
I'm doing great, Noma. We've been having a lot of fun talking about so much.
It is. It's always fun. And this is, kind of a fun topic and a funny one to both of us. And the title of this segment is, why is Will Smith allowing his son to be the face of a women's clothesline? And I saw an article today that talked about what is his name? Jaden Smith. He is the new face of a Louis Vuitton clothing line. And I thought, what's the big deal? It's a clothing line. But then I started seeing pictures of it, and he's in, what I interpret as girls' clothing. So there's a skirt, little tank tops, and just girls' clothing. And he is the face of that fashion line. So my immediate reaction was, okay, wait. He is a boy, and he's wearing girls' clothing. Couldn't they find a female spokesperson or face for? He has a sister. Couldn't they find a female face of Louis Vuitton female clothing line? And then the second thing is I had to wonder about, he's a teenager. He's still in his parents' care. I had to wonder about how his parents feel about that, and if it's, part of the Smiths. They have this kind of, we let our kids do whatever they want and develop how they want kind of parenting style. And I get it, because they live a completely different lifestyle than the rest of us, normal people. But I did ask myself, does Will Smith, a man, feel comfortable with his son walking around in women's clothes? That was a question I asked myself. And then the other thing that came to my mind was, is this playing into this new thing that we keep hearing about the feminization of black men? And I thought you might have some views about that. So what do you think?
Oh my gosh. It's like we ask a question like, it just seems like the earth is round, maybe it is. It's like we keep asking these same questions. And I saw an article that brought up a good point about how the NBA at one point regulated that all at NBA games, NBA players must wear suits or business casual attire. Then we have the attack we saw where law enforcement was had some kind of regulation about black men wearing their pants too low, sagging their pants. And then it was like we couldn't wear a hoodie. Trayvon Martin was wearing a hoodie. But we could wear a dress. A black man could wear a dress. We're okay with that. No problems, no questions asked. Put a dress on them. You know what I'm saying? To me, it just seems weird. Okay, you got a strong, masculine, muscular black man in the NBA dressing how he wants to dress, and we have to regulate that. We have a black man that, is part of, our culture, our fashion that people love around the world to wear hoodies. No, there's a problem with that. They look like a so-called thug. They look dangerous. They look scary. Even I heard a fan was saying LeBron looked scary the way he looked at her and all of these kinds of things. But when you have on a dress, you don't look scary anymore. It's okay. It's like, okay, dang. I mean, how blunt does an agenda need to be? How in your face does it need to be? So I don't really have to ask questions about whether it's happening, why it's happening, or anything like that. And again, people try to slam Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, the prolific genius of racial theory, and she just clearly stated all of the ways that if a group was trying to wage war, they would do it. And I mean, I personally, if I was waging war on a group and I saw a group of men with hoodies standing there muscular and at the gate. And then I saw a group of men like sashaying in some dresses. I'm like, okay, which part of this fence am I going to attack? I think I would attack the one that with the men with the Rachel Roy dresses and the heels on. I mean, I just would. So it makes sense to me that this is something that, you know, we have to question whether or not it's a good thing for the Black community as a collective, considering what we're dealing with.
So you're saying that this just kind of fuels that fire in terms of the effeminization of Black men. This just adds to it, or it just goes right along with it. Okay.
Yeah. Let me say one other thing. Mm-hmm. You can't pry a Black woman into those high fashion dresses. You have to. I mean, they're protesting now to get Black women on the runway.
Right.
In a dress, a Black woman in a dress. But all of a sudden now we can find room for a Black man to be in a dress in high fashion.
Good point. So what about blurring the gender lines? Because one of the things I was watching, I think it was The View, and this topic came up, and Raven Simone, I mean, you know, everything she says you have to take with a pinch of salt. But one of the points that she brought up was, well, this is just androgyny, where again, you kind of, you know, you can have a girl kind of dress boyish and have a boy kind of dress girlish, and it's not a big deal, and people are making more of it than it is. What do you say to that?
You know, it's kind of like, you know how sometimes your kids come to you and they say, Mommy, so-and-so doesn't have to go to bed at 9 o'clock to get up from school, and they don't have to wear uniforms, and they don't have to get A's and B's in school. And you say, well, so-and-so, you know, they're filthy rich. They're going to run their father's or their family's business. They don't have to be at school the same time. The circumstances are different, in other words. So maybe if you are in a dominant society and you really don't have to worry about, you know, potential genocide being waged against you and all this, you could play around with all these theories and all of these, you know, hey, you know, why don't we play this game? Why don't we do this? Why don't we change up sex roles?
You're alluding to privilege.
Yeah, you could call it privilege or dominance or supremacy. You know, you are in a powerful situation, so you can just say, hey, we want to enforce this law. We don't want to enforce this law. We want people to wear hoodies. We don't want people wearing hoodies, but we want them wearing dresses. You can just say this. So when people speculate about, well, what can we do? You know, you can do a lot of things, but are those things helpful? Are those things working for you? Are those things productive and a good part of strategy? Because again, a lot of times in Black America and even in the African diaspora, we're forced to look at each other just like what one individual does doesn't affect what everybody else does. But we know that people spend money on ad campaigns, on, you know, commercials, because the image does affect people. We know this. So, you know, again, you can say that you can play around with whatever you want, but are you ready for the consequences is the question.
Right. And the other thing that came to my mind, and I mentioned it a little bit when I started the segment, was, you know, the parents of this child, okay? Will and Jaden Smith. One of the things that, you know, I follow Jaden Smith, and I actually like her, and I have a lot of admiration for her, and I can tell you why. I like the fact that, you know, she came into the spotlight as an actress, you know, a performer. And then she got married, obviously, to another actor. But she has taken her role as a wife and a mother very, very seriously, and has even at some point stated that sometimes she had to actually scale back what she did professionally in order to be able to be what she needs to be to her kids and what she needs to be to her husband. So to me, it seems that they're not necessarily traditional. They're not a normal everyday family like the rest of us. but they still understand some basic principles that if two people, a man and a woman, are both chasing the dream and chasing the dollar, there's that danger that your children go neglected. And she took that bold and courageous step of saying, I'm going to trust him to, take the lead in terms of what we're eating, income and so forth, and really focus on his passion and his career and bringing in the money. And I'm going to focus more on making sure that our children are well taken care of and supporting and encouraging him in what he's doing. So to me, they seem like, even though it's not necessarily traditional, they do understand those basic principles that has to happen. And if it doesn't, things can go very wrong. So it was a little bit confusing for me that this is their child that now is just this, it seems to have abandoned that kind of way that we understand. But I also understand, and I want to, put this in here, is that I've heard her speak a lot about her children and that she wants to give them freedom, freedom to be who they are, explore what they want, and not impose too much on them. And like you said, it's not the same when it's a celebrity kid as when it's an everyday kid. But the celebrity kid is the kid that other kids see and look at and sometimes emulate. So it's kind of like a double thing. Like she puts her kid out there in that way. And we know, we adults know that, we know where we stand with anything. And if Jada decided to dress like a man, that wouldn't make me feel like dressing like a man because I'm an adult or whatever. But in terms of children, that's a different thing. But, the honest truth, though, also is that they've never positioned their kids as role models for anybody. But I still do find it quite interesting that they have that dynamic where the parents seem to kind of follow a slightly traditional way of life, and then their kids are allowed to just kind of free flow and do whatever. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I am not in a rush to criticize any Black person, regardless of what they do, especially if they are a public figure, because I don't know them personally. And I think that, everybody has to play out their own life and their own story. I've heard Jada say that the jungle that her children are navigating is the Hollywood jungle, where she had to navigate an inner city jungle. They had to navigate, they're having to navigate that. So in Hollywood, again, you have the luxury of your child toying around with what they toy around with in Hollywood. Maybe it's sex or whatever it is, image, and, get a Louis Vuitton ad out of it. You know what I'm saying? And it's all a part of their learning process. But I just wonder if Jada was still in the jungle of the so-called jungle she referred to when people are growing and going through their maturation process. If he had to do that in the inner city, would she allow him to go outside, in the inner city with a dress on, that kind of thing? So again, it's two things I look at here. When you allow your child to play in certain arenas, which is for Jaden is the arena of, it's just a low sense. He's playing around with ideas and situations on a different level than most kids. Then you see what comes out of it. I mean, he has a white girlfriend. I'm not saying anything about that. I'm not saying it is what it is, though. He's wearing a dress. I mean, these kind of things you kind of see in Hollywood because they're dealing with a whole other set of issues. So, in the scenario, if my kid, my child who's not growing up right now with access to over $200 million or so, we have to focus on a whole other set of things. My child is in a neighborhood similar to where Trayvon Martin was, walking down the street in a hoodie and getting killed. You know what I'm saying? Jaden's walking around in that dress with some probably bodyguards following him and all of that. So I'm not going to really take it on a personal level with Jada and Will and how they parent and even Jaden. I'm looking on it on a scale of, again, the Black image. It's always Black people have to be told, you know, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. If we say you can do this, even though it seems weird, we want you doing this. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? We don't want to bring businesses into your community. We don't want to bring schools into your community, but we can bring drugs. You know what I'm saying? So right. It's, again, when you look at it on that level, a lot of people are getting harmed. You know what I'm saying? I'm talking about lives here. You know, all of a sudden, one day, Jews were living in their houses in these communities and doing whatever they do as professionals. The next minute, they were marching into an incinerator, and dresses, heels, all of that's getting burned up at that time. So I'm looking for that from that perspective when I'm talking about a lot of different things, and I'm not necessarily just really zoning in on one person and their personal ways.
So basically what you're saying is it's bigger than Will Smith and his kid and Jada and so forth. We have to look at it on a holistically, or what the impact is or what the implication is in a bigger picture. And I think that's a good point to close on. But to answer the question, which is the first question of the segment, was why is Will Smith allowing his son to be the face of or even why is Jada allowing this? The truth is because they have a life that's different from the rest of us. That's really the main answer. Their life is different from the rest of us. And they play by different rules. And that's just, it is what it is. You know, I think there's nothing more to say than that. They're just not like the rest of us. And they can get away with things, if you call this getting away with anything, with things that other people can't. So, you know, we can leave it there. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to Your Black Women, where Black women keep it real. I want to thank you, Shaquita, for joining me on this segment. Again, this is Shaquita Graham from lovingtheblackman.com. Thank you, Shaquita.
Thank you, Noma. And also, please visit me, people, at atecco.com and atecco.teachable.com for technology training.
Absolutely. And my name is Mhlauli-Moses with Healthy Black Woman and theblackhomeschool.com. Thank you for watching.
Thank you, Noma.